Hey, all you seers and oracles of El Shaddai. This is our first Jesus trip of the new year after the holiday break. We got an extended prophetic word on the aftermath of the zombie apocalypse for you, as well as a rundown on some fun things coming your way in 2016. It's that time of year that all the prophetic pundits of the charismatic universe give their annual omen of what the Lord is saying for the upcoming calendar year. Now, whether he speaks by the Jewish or Roman calendar, it doesn't matter as long as you're regurgitating the same hogwash another prophet said with a different spin. That's called confirmation. Thus saith the Lord is a great way to say, I'm in tune. Listen to me. But on the flip side, yes, God does speak, and I do believe we can have insight on things to come. But overall, in terms of the stuff most people predict, there's this tendency to predict the roulette wheel of God's favor in a superstitious way that's predicated on our performance or our nation's repentance or whatever. And if that's the case, man, then the world is up the creek without a paddle. Whoever gets the White House, whatever the price on a barrel of oil, however they rig the Dow Jones, whether Taylor Swift gets a Grammy or Kim Jong nukes the world, I tell you, I'm going to be living in a bubble of glory. We are continually living in a season called the year of the favor of the sovereign Lord, the new covenant, the gospel. We are not bound by seasons, so we can raise our expectancy to start living in the inheritance that Jesus single-handedly unlocked before we were ever born. I know some time ago on our Inner Sanctum web conference, I had a prophetic word called After the Zombie Apocalypse. Now, if you were a member of our monthly web conference site, you would already be on the cutting edge of this prophetic word. By the way, tons of you guys don't even know about the Inner Sanctum. We have a monthly web conference you can join at thenewmystics.tv. We're going to continue this throughout the year. It's a way to really plug in. You chip in a few bones to keep our orphanages running, and you have access to over 60 hours of me preaching the gospel, access to our live Q&A and a fresh session every month, lots of new revies coming out. So go check it out when you're done if you've never done that before. And in fact, before we get into our zombie word, grant me a few minutes here to fill your post-Christmas stockings. I want to take a little time to tell you what we here at Sons of Thunder have coming down the pike in 2016, and some of it might surprise you. So this week, again, an extended Jesus trip, a prophetic word / upcoming year summary of what's on the docket. I believe that announcements can be the most anointed part of a whole session. Like if I announce a mission trip and you click on that little hyperlink of glory, that could be 2 weeks hammered drunk in some exotic land. So always check out the announcements at the end of these Jesus trips. They aren't commercials. I'm not a friggin' vacuum cleaner salesman. We just want to tell you what's coming up, and you won't find our promos on God TV or TBN. So we are a YouTube station here. So check it out. And speaking of missions, we had such a crazy wild time when we were in Indonesia in November, loving on lepers, visiting the garbage dumps in the Muslim slums, that we want to go back there next fall. Plus, we're going to throw Philippines into the mix, and we're going to have this massive big thing in the Philippines, and so you can join us for a 2-nation mission trip. This is the only one we have on the docket where you can actually join us in 2016. We are going to Cuba, but man, that trip filled up to the brim, and this one's probably going to flush out pretty early, so get your application in quick. Even though the trip's not until November, look, God will give you the money between now and then, but get your deposit in the door to lock in your spot. And another announcement for 2016, a lot of you guys, you watch the Jesus trip, but you're not on our email list. And some of you are missing out on some goodies. It's not that we spam you irrelevant prophetic words every week. We just send you a link to the video so you don't miss it. And in that single email each week, it also has links to events that may be on tap near you, as well as other special goodies. Like we have a link to our latest free edition of the Ecstatic Magazine that's going to be coming out in just a couple months. So if you're not getting the email, or maybe you changed your address and you haven't seen it pop through lately, just visit thenewmystics.com. You can subscribe at the top of the page, and then check your spam folder to make sure to put us on your approved sender list if it goes to your junk box, okay? Now look, I know you guys, you're on pins and needles. You're waiting to hear about this zombie apocalypse. Well, don't get worked up. That whole thing's already underway. I want to talk about the aftermath of the zombie apocalypse, but I'm not done plugging stuff for 2016. And this is the first Jesus trip of the year. Give me the courtesy of filling your ear. Few more things coming up. For the first time in 3 years, I'm doing an internship this summer. And before you pee your pants, remember, I can only take like 5 to 7 people. So while you're playing mental wiffle ball about it, somebody else is probably going to take your spot if you don't register early. Why, you ask? Because we're not going to Detroit on this one. This is an Arctic internship. This is going to be crazy. We're going to St. Petersburg, Russia. We're going to go to Iceland, Greenland, Sweden, Finland, fun, trippy places. It's at the end of August, but I would recommend signing up this week. Remember, just a handful of folks can come. And I understand also we're in an election year. And if you're really torn between candidates, here's what you need. You need gospel mania. That's right. This is going to be drunk. We're going to hit the campaign trail. I'm bringing Tim Wright as my running mate to lead worship as we travel coast to coast, stumping for this crazy, insane message of free grace. We're coming to the West Coast and the East Coast for a 2-part USA tour. The West Coast tour kicks off in April. 4 cities. We're going to be in Southern California and Port Hueneme. We'll be in Woodland Park, Colorado, near Colorado Springs. We'll be in Phoenix, Arizona, and Portland, Oregon. So if you're near any of those spots, mark the dates. And then we pick back up closer to the election day. We're going to be on the East Coast with Gospel Mania next fall, coming to Massachusetts, Nashville, Tennessee, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Chirac, Chicago. And look, a lot of you guys, you track with us. You love to join us in bodily form whenever we're near you, within a couple hundred miles. But hardest thing is just getting the word out, because, you know, you guys, you get bombarded with Facebook events. There's so much things that get lost in the shuffle, and only the bravest pastors promote our events. And so, you know, half the time, folks don't even know we're coming until we're there and we're gone. So we really rely on you guys, our Jesus Trip listeners, to help us in a grassroots way to get this gospel message out. And one of the best ways to do it is literally be part of our ministry spam team, reposting our videos, blasting out our events that are near you, tagging your buddies who need to hear the message. You know, seriously though, Paul, he said not to forsake the assembly of the saints. And I understand getting burnt out on church meetings, but we don't evolve beyond community. And isolation isn't fun all the time, okay? It's depressing. And there's something in the communal atmosphere where that indwelling fullness kingdom manifests in a tangible, weighty cloud of glory into ecstasis as we come together, people trancing out of their heads, getting pulled out of ourselves in drunken supernatural frenzies where all things are possible and real tangible miracles happen, physically overwhelmed by joy unspeakable. Man, we see crazy stuff, fat shrinking off of bodies, cancers disappearing, wild things, okay? I love what I do. I love this message. I love the atmosphere. People say, Crowder, if you weren't a preacher, what would you really say? And I'm pretty sure I've already said it, which is exactly why I get run out on the rails all the time. But look, if you're expecting me to just say, give up on church, give up on community, on the living, breathing body of Christ, dude, sorry, I'm committed. I don't get tired of gathering and releasing this gospel of grace. And a lot of you guys who are gospel junkies, who are drinking from the teat of El Shaddai, and whenever we're nearby, you're there, you're like a dog on a bone. I just want to say, man, we appreciate your support. And I just want to say that because I don't say it enough, and I don't tell our partners enough how thankful we are for you guys. I mean, we have some of the most faithful partners. We're not like sending little newsletters out, acting busy every month. Dude, you guys know we're busy. We're going balls to the wall all the time, and we just appreciate you guys running with us. You're brave, you're bold to run with weirdos like us, and you're the engine behind this whole ministry that makes it happen. So we appreciate your faithfulness. and remembering us as we go into another amazing year. So look, let me wrap this up. Besides the other stuff I mentioned, here's what else 16 holds for us. I'm going to take the month off, and I'm going to visit the island of Patmos sometime during the summer, where John received the revelation of Jesus Christ, the apocalypse. The Lord spoke to me about doing this over a decade ago. I don't know what's going to happen, but I am going to write. I'm going to see something crazy come out of it. I'm excited. But before then, this spring, I got a new book coming out, Money, Sex, Beer, God. Not going to talk about it, just get it. With a title like that, you're probably a Victorian prude not to. You can get it, johncrowder.net. And in 2016, we do have mystical schools coming to a few select locations. This mystical school, we still love doing it. It's an ever-evolving laboratory experiment where we're diving into the presence and the message and seeing the supernatural. So look, at the start of February, I'm in Oklahoma City. It's our only school in the Great Plains area of Texas, Kansas, Missouri. Make the trek, okay? I can't be back there for a long time. And then I'm in downtown New York City in February. I'm talking right in the heart of Manhattan. If you want to see the Big Apple, come join us there. And then April Fool's Weekend, we're going to be with our Chico friends near Redding, California for our Northern California Mystical School. And man, we have a ton of crazy fun Bethel folks coming over. We love those guys. And we have discounts for ministry school students. And then also I'm in the Northwest for our first event in Seattle, Washington in several years. Our Seattle Mystical School is April 8th through 10th. And then a little further north, we have a Canadian mystical school in 2016 in Vancouver, British Columbia. That one's in May. Okay, and then later in the year, I'm going to be in Sweden, I'll be in Switzerland, Florida. Not all that's posted, but that's going to be later on. But most everything for the year is already there at thenewmystics.com/schools. That's where you can find it all. So look, that's us. That's what we're doing. And I believe that we do what we do as an extension of what we believe and what we see the Father doing. And so this really ties into what I feel the Lord is going to be speaking to a lot of people, and really what He's already doing behind the scenes right now. This is definitely a year where we're going to see a continued propagation of the grace message going out, people entrenched in religion just getting knocked sideways by this thing and absolutely losing their bearings, and they're going to be ravenous to drink in the real gospel. I specifically want to encourage people who've been in ministry that are preaching this message, but maybe you've been discouraged because when people get the grace thing, they stop coming, they stop giving, they stop serving, and some of you have just been bewildered and almost ready to throw in the towel. You know, I had a dream recently where I was with a friend who had recently given up ministry, and he had a massive building in this dream, and there were no people, and it seemed like the interest in gathering for meetings was just over, and there were just like 2 people in the building. So I said, let's just knock it off, cancel the thing. I had this bag of books. I just gave them to the guy because there was no one around to read them. And then suddenly, that night, I didn't realize there's another meeting scheduled, and the place was packed out to the rafters. I mean, outside the doors, just cramming to get in there. A lot of you guys, man, you've been faithful. You've been trudging along, and it's not wrong if you've given up or given up in your heart, but God has something scheduled on His own docket, okay? In the old days, we would have called it revival. But all BS aside, I really see a massive rumbling about to turn the corner here. And those of you who've made a place for the gospel, that thing is going to fill up according to the platform you've built. I know I sound like Field of Dreams, but if you build it, they will come. Look, there's no other place for people to run but the gospel. God is going to build His church. He's going to pull this thing off. Don't get weary in well-doing. I'm telling you, something's about to pop at their core. People want the real thing. And furthermore, you know, last year, I said that 2015 was going to be a year for Christology, you know, diving into the person of who Jesus is. And that's not going to change this year. It's not like we woke up overnight and religion ceased to exist. I mean, the very departure from Christology, you got guys starting alien cults this year that were just on the Prophetic Glory Conference circuit a year or 2 before. We've gone from hyper grace to hyperspace. I mean, we need to understand the incarnation. Stop doing weird crap to become spiritual and realize we are intrinsically bound to God in the union of his humanity and divinity in Jesus. Christology is always the main focus. So I don't see us departing from that focus this year, but I do see it expanding into how it affects our lives in a very incarnational way. This isn't a year to jump onto some new theological trend. Paul says to hold fast to the profession of our faith. He says to remember the things that he taught. Faith is the absolute certainty of things hoped for, and there will be an increasing disillusioned mass. I'm telling you, they're going to be spinning off into existential, pseudo-spiritual nonsense, having burnt out on religion dogmatism. They'll just say, well, there's nothing we can know for certain. Just live for beauty, live for the moment, eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. We can't know any concretes. Look, I'm eating, drinking, and being merry, but I'm also anchored in a rock that is higher than I, and it keeps me hammered. He is a rock, solid, absolute truth. He's a living absolute, a living stone, but absolute nonetheless. Look, a lot of guys have just gotten so burnt out on religion that after hearing the message of grace, and they start to get some liberty, but they still have PTSD from all these years of under fear and legalism and condemnation. And you know, the zombie apocalypse has long been underway. The vast majority of churchgoers, parishioners, and of course just people in the world are those who don't realize the truth of their identity. And there's an invasion of the undead because they don't realize they're dead. It's living a false life. If humanity doesn't realize that their old, corrupt, wicked hearts have been eradicated, then they stay in that identity crisis, acting according to a lie. And that's exactly what that old nature is, that fleshly nature. It's a lie existence, living under the lie that we're constantly governed by sin, living in insecurity, anxiety, self-reproach, self-pity, alienation, bitterness. They think of themselves as sinful, corrupted, defiled, so that's what they manifest. They live according to that old rotten nature, because they don't realize it's dead. It doesn't really exist. They're manifesting a lie. And they're just as clueless about the gospel as a zombie is dull and hard-hearted and hard-headed, rather. Their eyes glazed right over in a stupor. I mean, have you ever met a smart zombie? Hey, I'm not trying to be rude. Some may accuse me of lack of love for my fellow religious brother. In fact, I love them to pieces, but let's just look at the facts. The Apostle Paul says their eyes are blinded by a spirit of stupor, a spirit of stupid. I've never met an intelligent zombie. Just because they look alive doesn't mean they really are. Just because they have rotten church clothes on and stumble around in the nave doesn't mean they're the church. But the greater truth is that Christ has already given them resurrection life. They're just not living according to it as long as they're trying to attain it themselves. Sure, most of the church has a language for resurrection life, but it's a form of godliness that denies the power thereof. It's just some theological principle. Oh yes, we died with Christ, but not really. Look, zombie life is not real resurrection life. They think they're just sort of dead. And if they really knew how dead they are, they wouldn't try to beat themselves senseless in an attempt to carry their own crosses and kill off their old nature that Paul clearly says over and over is already dead. So they're living the lie, and if they knew their propensity to sin was dead, then they would actually act a lot nicer. Look, we are not zombies. We are not carrying around that old dead body of flesh. And what do zombies go for? They eat brains. This is why we guard our thoughts. Don't feed into religious, depressive ideas. The renewal of the mind is a beautiful thing. It's a very thing we grow in as we allow supernaturally beautiful truths to explode rainbow colors throughout our creative little minds. Renewing the mind is not being depressed and beating yourself up over past sins. No, renewal of the mind is being refreshed and always turning your thoughts towards joyful, happy, brilliant, light-filled gospel realities. The renewal of the mind means constantly cheering up thanks to Jesus. If you want your mind to be renewed, it's sometimes good to have reminders. That's what the sacraments are for. We're always reminded of our union with Christ in our marriage, in our baptism, in communion, in the laying on of hands. Sacraments in the church are visible means by which the grace of God flows. We're also reminded in the communion, the fellowship of the saints, in partying together, in reading the Word, through the lens of Christ in the Spirit, that there's even this old thing we used to do called prayer. Remember that old classic junker you used to push around, but when renovated with a real engine by the finished work of the cross is actually enjoyable, refreshing, powerful, life-giving. So look, number one guide to surviving a zombie apocalypse is to protect your brain. There's swarms of people out there who give themselves over to infected, deadly zombie mindsets. Don't lower your expectancies in life. Don't resign yourselves to living below a gospel standard. Remember every day that you are personally, individually united and melded to a living, breathing, divine being, the God of the universe. You do not live out of your own potential. You live out of His potential. When your old self died with Christ, it didn't get back up again. No, the new you got back up again. See, a lot of Christians look like real people, but they're zombies, and all the religious formulas have an appearance of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. The only thing you can do for a zombie is give it a bullet to the head. Now, I do not mean you should literally go shoot a fellow Christian, and I surely do not mean you should help them kill off their old nature. That's the very thing that causes them to live like that. You can never kill yourself off. No, you mystically died with Christ 2,000 years ago. The only thing you can do is to convince them that they've already died. And it's not easy. Zombies don't always go down easy. So now this is where you may get confused. And this is where everybody gets confused. So are you telling me the way to get rid of a zombie is to tell them that they're not zombies? Exactly. In case you didn't realize it, zombies don't really exist. People live according to a lie. But a lie has no power over us except to the degree that we believe it. God doesn't see sinners, He sees humans. He sees a redeemed humanity. He sees one sacrifice on behalf of all. All of the old corrupted race in Adam met its final end in the broken body of Jesus Christ. And all humanity was spit out of the grave again, brand spanking new. Does that mean everybody's living like a new creation? By no means. Most of them still living like zombies. They're still living like they're in Adam because they don't know the glorious truth that they've been rebirthed in Christ. So we're talking about killing mindsets, and that's what we war against. Not demonic boogeymen, but every vain imagination and thought that rises up against the excellency of Jesus Christ and what He has accomplished. Now, look, survival's one thing, but after a zombie apocalypse, well, there has to be rebuilding. There must be a renewal of civilization. And that, my friend, brings us to our word for 2016. You've all met zombies. You all were zombies. That's nothing new. But what happens when we come out the other side? What will the new society look like? There will be a new grace society. I don't mean a new denomination, but there will be gathering. There will be society. There will be structure. Structure itself is not evil as long as the structure serves us and we're not serving it. We can idolize structures, but they are tools to help us, and that's all. See, there is a rebuilding that needs to take place. So many people have been so traumatized and disillusioned by religion, the zombie apocalypse, and now they want nothing to do with real life. Remember PTSD. Sometimes people get excited about grace, but then they just seem to fall away entirely. Look, this is what happened. They hear the good news, and then the veneer falls off. Their religious, obligatory, fear-based motivations for doing good stuff fall away, and then they just stop doing good stuff. And so grace gets blamed for their sudden apathy or smoking habit or drinking problem. But grace was never the problem. Grace just exposed the fact that they were performing like a monkey in a fancy hat. But all those nice Sunday deeds were never truly coming from their heart. When they saw that they were accepted by God regardless of what they did, a lot of them just stopped wearing the makeup altogether, and we get a dirty glimpse of what had been going on under the surface for so long. But if they don't stick with the gospel, they're not going to grow up. They just keep sucking their thumb, pissed off at religion, the stuff they came out of. And sure, people will get excited about the gospel for a while, But unless they get rooted and drink deep and continually of the truth of God's love in their union and perfection amid tangible experience of the joys of it all, well, then we have, the parable of the seed that falls in the bad soil, don't we? Remember the religious crowd. It says, oh, he got grace and now he's not being a good Pharisee. And maybe the guy is just sinning now. Just because you were a good Pharisee doesn't mean you wouldn't kill Jesus if you have a chance. So look, when grace comes to church and it brushes away some of the whitewash, don't be surprised to see some dead men's bones come out of the closet that have been there all the while. And then you go blame the message like blaming the messenger. Look, no, grace just exposes the charade, but the goal is not just to embitter you, but relieve that bitterness with the balm of healing and tell you that you are so much more, to kindle a new desire, to breathe a fresh wind into your sails, to absolutely transform your motivation. Some of the stuff you were doing wasn't bad stuff, but it's like after a zombie apocalypse, there's a rebuilding. You need a new government. You need a new economy, schools, local disco halls. But even that word building, it ruffles feathers because we've associated it with the zombie version of building our own religious structures and our personal kingdoms, when in reality, building does need to happen, but it's the Lord working mightily through us, lest we labor in vain. And the same way that a zombie looks like a real person, there are many things in the religious world that are shadows. They hold similarities to real spiritual truths. Remember in C.S. Lewis's Narnia novel, I forget which one, how they reject the real Aslan when he comes because they were all burnt out on the fake Aslan usurper who had been on the throne, and they had lost their taste for the real Aslan because they had only seen the counterfeit. Look, don't reject the real if all we've seen are counterfeits. And we've been burnt out on those. I mean, there's so many counterfeits. Look at morality. Just because you've known a moral code that had you currying favor and trying to attain holiness, that doesn't mean we just chuck morality out the window now. We need to see it through a gospel lens, through a grace lens. Because you are holy, therefore, live like an upright person. Don't pork the secretary. Say no to drugs. Giving is another big one. Just because you got burnt out on that legalistic, obligatory, fear-based tithing system doesn't mean we throw giving out. For crying out loud, sowing and reaping is a Pauline New Covenant principle that works for us. One of the most exciting things we can do when we get it, but under religion, it was the most excruciating thing. Sowing is supposed to be fun. I have 4 children. I enjoyed sowing every single one of them. Now, if giving is not that much fun to you, then you've only known it in a religious way. With a lack mentality. Look, furthermore, just like tithing was a lifestyle, so is grace giving. I made love to my wife once. It was rather fun, so I determined to make a habit of it, okay? In the same way, when you get the principle of giving and the joys of reaping from a new covenant perspective, a rebuilding begins to take place in that area of your life. You realize you are a giver. That's what you're made to do. See, God's stripping away a lot of the cynicism, restoring trust, recovering health right now, letting our defenses down that were a necessary survival mechanism under religion, and letting people back in again. I hate to say this, but some of you might even find yourself going to a local church again. Missions is another one. Remember when the Great Commission was shoved down our throats and we knocked doors in fear of having the blood of our neighbors' eternal souls on our hands? Well, now in grace, there's a rebuilding in that area in which we have these ravenous appetites to share the gospel. In the far-flung corners of the world, even to chuck vast sums of money and time to make it happen, volunteering freely in the day of his power. See, so many of these things that religion majored on in a perverted form were real important things, just like zombies look like real people, they just weren't alive. Some of you, you might start prophesying again. You may start praying for the sick again and seeing healings. I would still probably stay away from Christian TV and CCM music, but who knows? I mean, look, we still have leadership, but it's not control, it's fathering. People who've been burnt out by religion will have rejection and adverse even to loving mentorship, but God wants to restore trust there as well. And if you're anointed for leadership, you don't have to go telling people you're a leader and demand a title. People are drawn to the whack and the authority on you. If all you knew were zombies, then you see a real man, you might think, oh, he's got arms and legs and he moves, he must be a zombie. And if all you knew were hypocritical religious structures, it's understandable. You just want to pack it all in and give up on everything. But let me tell you, there is an exuberant infusion of resurrection life this year. Many of you have been through the ringer and know the cynicism of Solomon's latter years. But there is going to be a spring of remembering the love song of his youth, okay? So I just want to encourage you guys. I love you all. I want you to have a great year. We'll see you next week.